Hey there, YouTuber. So in this video, I'm going to help you select a B660 motherboard for your lock CPU, all right? Two assumptions for this video. One, that you want to go with B660. Two, that you've got a locked CPU. Now, I may go off tangent at some point and talk about unlocked CPUs in these motherboards, but for the most part, we're going to stick it to locked CPUs. Now, why did you end up at B660? Quite a few reasons, right? Maybe you thought the price was better. Definitely selection of B660s, the mere quantity of B660s is much greater than H670s or H610s. Maybe you saw one of my videos talking about how I hate the H610M that I bought, how the quality is, whatever that may be. All right, so let's start with size of motherboard. So right now we're looking at full ATX. There is also micro ATX and then ITX. Let me get a better view of that. Now, how do you determine what size motherboard you want? Well, if you're going to pick your case first, which some people do, right? Oh, I really like this pink case, and then they go, well, the only motherboard that's going to fit in here, maybe it is an ITX, okay? So I like to work the other way. I like to pick my CPU, then my motherboard, which is usually full-size ATX. That's my preference. And then, the case, all right? That's how I would go at it. But some people might go with the case. Maybe they watch one of the bigger channels, and they say, oh, this has the best airflow, and then they want to go with that case, right? A lot of times those are the bigger cases because you get more volume inside of them and usually better airflow with that volume. So if I am looking at an ITX size case, your only choice is the ITX motherboard. If I'm going to go with a mini tower, such as I think it's the Matrix 30 that I have, you have the option of micro ATX or ITX, okay? If you go mid tower, a lot of times the ATX is kind of a tight fit in there, but it fits. You've got that choice. You've got micro ATX and then ITX. If you go full size, to be honest with you, the only one you really want to put in there is a full ATX. Now, the other two may fit in there as well. They just won't look as good, okay? There's going to be a lot of, people talk about white space. Depending on what your case looks like, it could be black space, white space, whatever, gray space. So you've got a lot of area in your case that you're just looking at the metal from the case. All right, so now got that out of the way. Maybe you've narrowed it down at this point. If you're like me, I'm trucking for a full ATX. What are the other advantages of something like ATX over micro ATX and ITX? Well, you may get more features with it, and or you may get a greater quantity of those features. What do I mean by that? Well, this guy has 3 M.2 spots, okay? This micro ATX only has 2. One there, and then the ITX example, this one actually has 2. Or does it have more? No, there you go, 2. All right, so a lot of these only have 1, but this example has 2. RAM slots, you've got 4 with this one. Some of the micro ATX are 2 or 4, and then I think every ITX I've ever seen in my entire life has only had 2. So that's something else to think about there. Now, we're not going to get into real detail on it, but VRM, that can also factor in. Usually the bigger, more expensive, okay, and there's usually a higher price associated with this, right? have better VRMs. What does that matter for you? Well, if you were, let's say if you're doing a overclocked CPU on a Z690, it's a must-have. You've got to have quality VRM. If you're looking at a motherboard for a locked CPU, it might not be as important. Okay, so where is that line at, folks? I like to think it's between the i5 12600 and the i7 12700. Okay, that is the line. That anything greater, i7 12700 and greater, you need a better VRM. The i5 12400, you know, I'd have to do a little more research, but I put the i5 12400 in some of the crappier motherboards I have, and did not really see a distinct difference benchmarking or performance compared to the other motherboards. Now, looking at the very bottom of the scale for CPUs, Celeron G6900, Pentium G7400, i3 12100F or 12100. Those work pretty much in any of these motherboards without any difference between them and the better motherboards, okay? Now, are there some motherboards out there that could potentially make those CPUs run even better? Yeah, we'll get to that at the very end of this when I talk about, you know, if you have an ungodly amount of money to spend, what would you really want to shoot for, okay? So hopefully we'll get there eventually. All right. So something like this guy most likely has a much better VRM setup. Even better, boom, this guy, right? This thing is going to kick butt. And we'll come back to this specific motherboard in another feature that it has over some of the others. All right. So we've talked about some of the features. Another feature that might matter are your case fan headers. If you buy one of the ginormous cases, you might find that by not getting a better motherboard, you don't have enough fan headers. You may also find, though, that those fans that are on your case can either be powered by Molex or a 4-pin. And if that's the case where it's Molex, then you can power that up from your power supply, and it is not going to be an issue that you do not have all those fan headers. But, you know, just things to take into account. Is it that important? It may be. It may not be. Fan headers going to be a lot bigger deal depending on what kind of components you have on here. Whether, you know, you have a massive heat generating graphics card, whether you do go with the i7 or the i9, and you have set power limits to unlimited, you know, whatever you may do to increase the amount of heat that is on this motherboard. That will be the case where what you have for fans and airflow and your case selection really, really matters, okay? So other things to look at on your motherboard in regards to the case. If your case has 4 USB 3.0s on it, you might want to find a motherboard that has 2 of these USB 3.0 headers. All right, this may say 3.2 on it, but if your case has, say, 2 USB 3.0s and 2 2.0s, you'll want to have a minimum one of these, and you should hopefully find a motherboard that has 2 USB 2.0s, okay? So when does this matter, how many USB 2.0s it has? Well, if your motherboard doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi, there's a good chance that you need at least one of these, right? If it doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi and you want Wi-Fi, you're going to want to have at least 2 of these. The Wi-Fi card that goes in one of these smaller slots will require using a USB 2.0 header. And then your case, if it doesn't have all USB 3.0s, it will also require a USB 2.0 header. So more things to look into. You know, occasionally I bought the wrong motherboard to go with a case and I've lost features on it. Other things on here relevant to your case. Does your case have a USB Type-C Charlie on it? Okay, that's what this header right here is. If we can zoom in, hopefully, I guess we're maxed out. So if your case has that on it, you'll want to get this on your motherboard. All right, so that I think covers the stuff related to the case on here. Most of the other stuff is standard stuff. Your front panel connectors are all here. HD audio, so you know you're going to find those on every motherboard, right? So other things to factor in, folks. We have these guys up here. So this is one of the better B660s. It's got a 1x8 and the additional 1x4. Most of you do not need anything greater than 1x8. But if you want to maximize that i7, that i9, maybe even if you put a unlocked CPU in this motherboard to get all that you can get out of it, having that additional 1x4 may help. Okay? And you will find a kind of a, they go hand in hand. Usually if it has this, it usually has the much better VRMs, okay? But once again, I have a Pentium, I have a Celeron, I have an i3, I have an i5. You know, you don't necessarily need this motherboard, right? Aesthetics. You're going to find with the price, are you going to be happy with how plain Jane this motherboard looks? Or this one? Do you want something more attractive that has cool colors on it and lights up? Especially these guys, right? These are really nice motherboards. Is it worth the price, though, is the question. So that's something else that you have to factor in. Upgradability. I think you're going to find every B660 will say that it's compatible LGA 1700, LGA 1800. What does that mean to you guys? Well, that means this is going to be compatible for 13th gen Intel. Will it require a BIOS update? Yeah, most likely, and that's something to talk about later. But for now, your only concern is 12th gen fitting in this. What else do you care about? Well, looking at these motherboards, you know, a lot of the stuff is going to be similar from one motherboard to another. The 24-pin power connector. B660, 4 SATAs. So if you wanted more than 4 hard drives, you may have to consider a Z690 motherboard, okay? Cmos battery. All of these are going to have that. Now, other things to think about here. PCIe 5.0, 4.0, and how many of these graphics card slots do you need? All right? Do you want to have a motherboard that's set up better for the future? Well, if that's the case, then you may be wanting to get one that's PCIe 5.0. How long will it be till you can take advantage of that? And will it be that big of performance difference between, you know, a future graphics card that has PCIe 5.0, sticking it in either a PCIe 5.0 slot or 4.0? What will be the actual performance difference? Probably not going to be that great, right? But maybe that's something that you want to consider. Now, if you're like me, you like motherboards that have at least 2 or 3 of these full-size slots, and I like mine spaced out. So to be honest with you, I like this one here, and then I like one way the hell down here, right? That enables me to put 2 graphics cards in there and keep some good airflow between them. This one, you know, not necessarily set up that well, but for some of you, this may be adequate. So those are other things to look at. If we look at this guy, you know, same thing. These are kind of close. This motherboard only has one of them. okay, as well as this. So some of you may realize for whatever you're doing, whatever application, having more than one graphics card is useful. Now, what could that be? Well, maybe it's video editing, maybe it is streaming, maybe it is recording gameplay, maybe it, even doing, I want to say CAD, computer aided design. I used to do that when I was younger. That might even help with, having multiple graphics cards, because that might also allow you to have multiple monitors if you need it. Whatever that case may be, that you need multiple graphics cards. For those people that mind having more than one slot in there for a graphics card, and I'm talking crypto mining, that's also a good thing, right, for those. So, all right, that's another thing to factor in. What else, folks? RAM. So we talked about the quantity of slots. There's also DDR4 versus DDR5, right? Is it worth spending the money to buy DDR5 right now? The motherboards cost more usually, and guess what? The RAM is 2 to 3 times more expensive. And is it a real performance boost? Well, I've done videos comparing DDR4 different RAM speeds, and there was a performance boost, but you could also buy a greater quantity of the slower RAM at times and get the same performance as buying the faster RAM in a smaller quantity. So that argument may not work in every case. So looking at DDR5, I bought 2 sticks of DDR5, both 8 gigs, 4800. It allows me to overclock those up to, I think 5,000. They still work without causing any problems. So that is definitely the fastest RAM I have. DDR4, I have 4133 megahertz, and I've overclocked that a little higher. But I have not done a comparison. To be fair, to do a real fair comparison, you would have to buy the exact same motherboard, right, as a D4 and a D5 version of that exact same motherboard, right? And then I would have to uninstall all my components from one to the other and hope that, I ended up getting a good comparison between those games. Then I could tell you the actual difference. Funny thing is, most of these people that make these videos online, you have no idea whether they've actually done that or not, what motherboard they're using. They could have picked some totally different motherboard, and you just don't know. But when DDR5 gets up to 7,000 megahertz, boom, then you're talking a huge difference. Then you're going to want DDR5. But at what cost? Okay, so now, what is the other really super exciting thing that comes with DDR5, folks? Well, I can't show you this guy's video, but check this guy's video out. If you want to get really high benchmarks out of your locked CPUs, you can kind of follow along with what motherboards he buys and get an idea, and that will get you some ridiculous performance. Now, that performance comes with a cost. Those motherboards are not cheap, all right? And what do all those motherboards that he shows in his videos have? Well, they have DDR5 RAM, all right? So I can't say for a fact this has the feature that you'll see in that video, but the feature that I'm talking about is the ability to unlock the block frequency. And that is only in certain motherboards. And from what I've seen, it's in your better Asus motherboards. Now, the other thing that those motherboards have to have is DDR5 RAM. None of my DDR4 RAM has the ability to unlock the block frequency. So if you don't know what that is, folks, let me pause a second, and I'm going to show you one video that I have. All right, so this video, one of many that I did, this didn't get a lot of views, just like most of my videos, but that's another story. I had adjusted the block frequency from 100 megahertz to 102.9 and was able to get a higher FPS than I got without having it adjusted. So this has existed for a while. However, the more current computers do not all have them. For whatever reason, it's the DDR5 ones. Is it worth the money, folks? You know, the difference is, honestly, you could buy a unlocked CPU and a bunch of DDR4 RAM and probably get a lot of the same performance boost. Now, if you look at this guy's video, though, he really pushes it, right? Where I just set it to 2.9% higher than what it normally is. This guy will go, I think it's either 20% or 30% higher, and you'll see some ridiculous Cinebench scores from this guy. And because of that, that is honestly going to drive that score up even higher. Now, what else to talk about, folks? We're starting to run out of things. I think the final thing is Wi-Fi or no Wi-Fi. Considering the selection of motherboards is so poor out there in the low end, I would definitely have to say, you know, you might want to consider Wi-Fi. Later on, you might go, oh, it would have been nice to have Wi-Fi in there. I didn't have Wi-Fi. Should have got it. And you come back, and if you bought the wrong motherboard that only has the one USB 2.0, where we saw, somewhere in here, we saw one motherboard that didn't have it. Maybe it was this guy. Yeah, this guy only has one. So this does not have Wi-Fi. At least I don't think it does. Let me just make sure it doesn't have it before I say something. So later, if you wanted to come back and put a Wi-Fi card in here, guess what? You're not going to be able to do it because you've got your case plugged into it. Well, you can unplug the case. Now your USBs on the front of your case don't work, right? Your 2.0. So that is, you know, one negative of this motherboard. Now, looking at the sides of these, certain things that you might care about. You know, we said, well, your case has the Type-C Charlie. You know, you don't necessarily need it in the back. But you'll find most of these motherboards, 12th gen, will have Type-C in the Charlie in the back. So maybe you don't care about that. Your Gigabyte LAN speed, you know, when is this going to matter for most of us gaming from home? I really don't see most of us needing anything faster than the 1 gigabit. I don't think we need, you know, 2.5 or 10. Now, if you're going to hook these up in some kind of LAN party, you know, another story, right? Maybe you want to have that faster thing. Or if you're on your home network, you're transferring a lot of huge files. Maybe that matters. You know, other things to look at. If you're not going to buy a graphics card, you might be concerned about what the connectors are on here. Not that many of us need VGA. This is a nice thing to have, honestly, at times. But do you really need it? Most motherboards don't have it. DisplayPort HDMI at a minimum. You know, if you're not going to go with a graphics card and you need 2 HDMIs or 2 DisplayPort, you might want to look around at different motherboards. Some of those do have additional, you might find 3 of these on there, okay? And when I say 3, it might be 2 HDMIs, 1 DisplayPort. The number of USBs are, you know, I think a little more limited with the B660s compared to, say, a Z690. So that's something also to factor in. Audio connectors, if you want to hook this up to your home theater, you know, hey, this might be something you want to look at. Most motherboards on the cheap end just have these 3, right? So you're going to get microphone, headphone, line out, where this one has rear out and fiber optic and I think a subwoofer. So that is, you know, pretty nice feature there. Pretty much every motherboard, folks, is going to have a driver disk. Here's something else to factor in. I/O shield. Do you want your I/O shield built in? to the motherboard itself or a separate piece like this, right? So I hate these. I love them when they are, let's see if this guy has it built in, right? You can see that. Now, if you were to look at the other motherboard from the side, well, this guy, right? That's gonna, you have the cheap, they don't even show you, they don't even give you a picture of it. This one has this little aluminum piece of junk that comes with it. This one's at least a little nicer looking. But as you look at this way, you have to put the IO shield over it to make this look nice. Like I said, I like them built in. Does that matter to most of you? No, probably not, right? So you may or may not care about that. Personally, is it worth spending that extra money? Usually it's a feature that comes with the nicer, it's going to come with the nicer motherboards. Now, if you build enough computers, the reason I bring that up is getting those IO shields to stick, depending on the case, right? You have different levels of quality of cases. Some of them are, the manufacturing tolerances are poor. Maybe they got dinged up in shipping. And a lot of times this type of built-in IO shield fits in those a lot easier than the ones that do not have built-in. The ones that you would actually have to grab the separate IO shield, okay? So, other things to look at. We're starting to finally run out of stuff. There's so many similarities between these. So we talked PCIe 5.0, we talked DDR4 versus DDR5. All of these are going to be 12th and 13th gen. We talked a little bit about VRMs. I'm not going to give you in this video a doctoral thesis on it. Just know that if you've got something like this guy, you're not going to want to put in the awesome i9 in here, okay? This is not an ideal setup and probably not that great for the i7. I honestly, my best benchmarks for the i7 12700 came in the Z690, which had really good VRMs in it. So I think that's about it, folks. We talked a little bit about this. Most of you don't need anything more than 1x8. If you go with the i7 12700 or the i9 or an i5 12600K or an i7 12700K, probably should look at the 1x8 and the 1x4. Will it matter? That's questionable unless you open up the power limits. All right, and you're probably not going to see much difference in gaming in a lot of different games. Cinebench is potentially the one place you'll really see a difference in the scores. Now, a game that has a high need for multi-core performance, that is another place where that might matter, right? But playing Fortnite 1080p low, it doesn't matter, okay? And that's going to do it, folks. Thanks for checking the video out. I hope it helped you. If it didn't, sorry. But that was my thoughts. Now, did I actually give you guys any motherboards to buy? Well, that is really the question. If you came to this video for help in selecting, now, obviously, we threw out all of the H610Ms, right? So the low-end motherboards on here for something like somebody that's going to buy a Celeron or a Pentium or an i3, you're probably going to be fine with something like this B660M DS3H. I have a ASRock B660M-HDV that I spent about the same amount of money. If this was available at this price at the same time, I would never have bought the ASRock. Gigabyte, even on their very low-end stuff, is still better quality. Now, here is a, next level up as far as RGB stuff goes. And my B660M only has 2 RAM slots, so both of these have 4. So considering I have, probably 40 sets of DDR4 RAM. This is better for me. Now, on your low end for a ATX motherboard, this is probably the lowest end it's going to get right here, folks. $140. Now, would I buy this or would I buy this guy right here? I actually would spend the money on this one, folks. If I was looking at low end and I wanted full-size ATX, this gives you some decent upgradability. It's still pretty pricey, you know. Do you need this for the Pentium or the Celeron or the i3? No. But it does look sharper, honestly. It does have quite a bit of M.2 slots. Has the way I like my graphics card, or ability to separate my graphics cards. Most of you, this won't matter, but I can put my big monster card here and have a second one here to do recording. Or like I said, if you're out there CPU mining, that might work better for you as well. So we have the, this is actually a really nice feature. This M.2 is above the graphics card. So even it has a heat sink, but it is also not getting that additional heat from the graphics card sitting up here. I mean, it might get some, but not as bad as sitting right underneath it. So overall, I actually really like this one. Why do I like it? Well, you've got Wi-Fi. You've also got what looks like a built-in M.2, or excuse me, built-in I/O shield. So that's good. Not that it matters, but 2.5. You find most of these have all the USB stuff. Now this guy also has the BIOS update button on the motherboard and this specific spot. So it's supposed to be able to do that without actually having to screw with going through the BIOS. I will always probably go through the BIOS though. And this has pretty good connectors, right? So this is a better deal than the Asus TUF motherboard that I had, the B660M, price-wise, and it's full ATX, right? So the Asus TUF one is a pretty good micro ATX motherboard. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, right there. So costs more. Very solid motherboard. If you were looking for a micro ATX version that's gonna run good with all the CPUs, I would say this guy's pretty good in that price range. It has PCIe 5.0 capability, DDR4, so not DDR5. It's got the better 2.5 gig. Now, where it was limited, I think it only has 2 M.2 spots. It might only have 1. No, it has 2. And it has 1 above the graphics card. So that's, in my opinion, positive. You also see this has a 1x8 and a 1x4. So you might be able to push it a little more with the better CPUs, okay? And they talk about their massive VRM and M.2 heat sinks. Whether that's true or not, you know, is another story. It's all propaganda these days, right? Ukrainian propaganda, Russian propaganda, and even in the motherboard world, there's propaganda. All right, so that's kind of like these days what I would say my mid-level choices are. I would say this one if you need micro ATX. If you don't need micro ATX, I would get this guy. Now on the high end, folks, high end, I don't even think we're going to see high end prices on here, which sucks. There's no, I don't think they have DDR5 choices with B660 at Newegg. So here's an ASRock, but this is just cheap junk here, folks. I'm not even going to open it up. Yeah. I don't even see the RAM type. I'll have to scroll down. DDR5. Okay, so this is micro ATX. So on the micro ATX side, if you want a really kick-ass DDR5 version, this would probably be the recommendation. It's got just about everything you could want on it. So this is pretty nice, right? But there aren't a whole lot of DDR5 choices for micro ATX. So you're kind of limited. There's a DDR4 version of this. Significantly cheaper, right? So you factor in $50 plus the price of the RAM. Might not be worth it. And you saw the speed was up to 6,000 something. Now, on the very high end, and this goes back to this guy's video right here, this guy. Something like this, folks. I don't know how much this costs. I don't even know where the hell you buy it at. It was not available. I don't believe. Let's go in here. I don't even know if we're going to see any of these. So Z690, D5. Yeah, it's not pulling up anything. And you know how lousy Amazon search engine is. It's just garbage. Didn't return. It should tell me there's nothing that matches this. And it doesn't. But yeah, this is one of the best out there. But like I said earlier, is it worth spending this much money to get this if you also have to pay for more expensive DDR5 RAM? You know, you're going to get the best scores possible out of that locked CPU, but you could also look at, gee, I could just buy an unlocked CPU, put it in Z690, a cheaper Z690, DDR4, put more RAM in it, and boom, get, you know, potentially the same performance. So there you go, folks. I hope this helped you. Those were my kind of my choices, low end, mid range, and then on the high end. If you want all that you can get out of locked CPU, you've got to buy something like this. This guy's video here, like I said, he actually shows you some examples. I did buy one DDR5 RAM motherboard. Got some, you know, performance improvement, but not like that guy does. So thanks for checking out the video. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.